Now, one of the reasons that you subscribe to BillO'Reilly.com, you watch us on the First TV, whatever it may be, is because we give you information no one else gives you. All right? So you have a unique pipeline to really know what's happening in this country. Now, a lot of you get mad at me and write me letters. How can you say this? How can you say that? Because we're so far ahead of the story. So most, when you watch cable news in particular, because of the bias built into the operations, you're not getting really what's happening unless what's happening fits into their bias, whether it's pro-Trump or anti-Trump. Here we don't do that. So I have a good program for you tonight, and it's going to go into four major directions. The first one is the violence in American cities. Now, if you think back to New Year's Eve, all right, there wasn't any violence, right? So we enter 2020, watching a Rose Bowl, New Year's Day. I went to the Super Bowl in Miami. No violence. Nope, nowhere. And then all of a sudden, pandemic rolls in, people get scared, and the ideologues say, we have a destabilizer in America, which is the illness. All right, COVID. It's destabilizing our economy, our institutions, our belief in government. So the radicals are going, this is something we might be able to use. But there wasn't a window in until George Floyd. And once George Floyd was killed by the police officers in Minneapolis, all hell literally broke loose. Now, this is driven by a few groups, but it could not happen unless the American media approved of it. So if the media condemned the violence, couldn't happen. But the media does not. All right, let's get specific. There are two reasons for the violence: crime, violent crime, and insurrection. The violent crime is obvious in places like Chicago, growing in New York City. Portland, Oregon is insurrection. Seattle is insurrection. But violent crime is caused primarily by drug gangs. All right? Young people selling narcotics, divided into two groups: the American gangs and the foreign gangs. That's MS-13 in El Salvador, a lot of other places. All right, so we've allowed so many bad people into a country. They form gangs, they sell narcotics. In New York City, you want to go up to the Upper West Side, you'll see the Dominican gangs. You'll see the Jamaican gangs. You'll see the Albanian gangs. You'll see the Russian gangs in Brooklyn. They're all there, and they're not born here. And they're violent. They'll shoot you for no reason. A lady wanted them to stop shooting off fireworks in New York City the other night. They shot her 8 times. She's dead. Why? Because they know they're not going to get caught. The Chicago thing is horrifying, and it's been going on for years, and we'll prove it. Okay. So in charge of all this are governors and mayors, and then in Washington, the president. That's what you have in charge. Senators, congresspeople, they're not in charge. You got the governor of the state, you got the mayor of the city, you got the president of the United States that oversees everything. That's the structure to control violence, both criminal and insurrectionist. So in Chicago, which is the best case to show you how bad it is, in 2016, 4 years ago, there were 354 murders in Chicago, city of Chicago, 2,132 shootings. There are only 365 days in a year. So do the math, okay? So Chicago, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, because this year in Chicago there have been 373 murders, okay? More, and we're only into July, than the whole year in 2016, and 1,900 shooting victims. So Chicago's totally out of control, and has been for 5 years, and even further back than that. So Rahm Emanuel was the mayor of Chicago for 8 years. He did nothing. He was afraid, okay, because he didn't want to alienate the African American lobby. So he wouldn't say what was driving the violence, which is drug gangs. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, is about as incompetent a governor as ever served in the history of this republic. Yet people in Illinois, and Cook County primarily, vote him in. So now we have Lori Lightfoot, who's an African American. She's the new mayor of Chicago. Here's what she says about the murder rate in her town. Go.
He could make sure that we closed the gun show loophole. We could pass universal background checks. We could make sure that people that aren't allowed to fly don't get guns. These are simple things that could happen if the president is serious about helping us with the violence, and the thing that he can do is to stop the flow of illegal guns in our city.
All right, that's ridiculous, absurd. So she doesn't ever ask for accountability of the criminal element who are using the guns to kill people. No. Why? Because they're blacks. They're black that doing this. Black killing black. All right, so no, I'm never going to ever do that. It's President Trump could stop the gun flow into Chicago. That's impossible. The only person who could do that would be Jesus Christ if he came back. He could do it by performing a miracle. No one else. All right? Gun flow into Chicago, you're going to control that? You're going to search every vehicle that goes in? It's insane. All right? Now, Lightfoot doesn't care whether what she says is insane and irresponsible. She knows that gives her an excuse. It's Trump's fault. All these murders are Trump's fault. Even though we had them during the Obama administration and nothing got improved there, even though it's President Obama's hometown, even though we had that, it's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault. All right, and they keep voting her in. New York City, de Blasio, directly on him. Demoralized the police force. Police now are sitting there going, hey, you know, if I do anything, I could get fired. I could get prosecuted. So I'm going to get in the car. Or I'm going to walk the beat and look the other way unless it's a capital crime. All right, shooting victims in New York up 71% in the last year. It's just insane. So Donald Trump's hometown is New York. Now he's moved out to Florida, made his statement, but here's what he says about the rising violence in New York City. Go.
We can't let this happen to the cities. New York was up 348%, the crime rate. So the governor has to do something about it. And if the governor's not going to do something about it, we'll do something about it. But what's happening in New York, a place I love New York, and look at what's going on over there. The woman who was shot because she said, could you please not light off firecrackers, and they turned her and shot her 8 times and she died? That's not our civilization. That's not about us.
Okay, so you can't argue with Mr. Trump's analysis there. There is no central authority in New York City, and the governor of the state, Cuomo, has contributed to this murderous climate by signing that insane no bail law. That's the truth. There's no two sides to the story. All right? They don't exist. There's only one side. People are being gunned down, mostly poor minority people, in both Chicago and New York. They're being murdered, and the authorities can't stop it. Won't stop it. Don't want to stop it. Why don't they want to stop it? Because the more carnage there is in the country, the better chance Donald Trump has to lose the election. So there's no incentive for any of these mayors or governors on the Democratic side to do anything, and they're not. Now, insurrection. So Portland, Oregon, for 57 days, had violent stuff going on. 57 days. And it's only 3 days ago that Donald Trump ordered federal agents into Portland, Oregon to protect the federal buildings and the people who work in them. 3 days. So that's 54 days. Mayor Ted Wheeler and the governor of Oregon couldn't control it. Yet, magically, the whole thing is Trump's fault. Roll tape.
You'll recall last week, President Trump said he would, quote, dominate protesters. He's making good on that threat by sending his troops to cities like Portland, Oregon. And we've made it very clear. They're not needed here. They're not wanted here, and we want them to leave. They're escalating what's an already tense situation. And frankly, they're making things much worse.
Insane. Okay? Insane. Much worse. There's already been $25 million worth of damage in downtown Portland, Oregon. Already. All right? They won't tell us, the authorities in Multnomah County, how many people have been hurt or killed. They won't put those out. But I'll tell you what happened last night. All right? At midnight, 1,000 people gathered at the federal courthouse and tried to set it on fire. Last night, 1,000 people. And they were tear gassed by the feds to break them up. All right? Wheeler is an idiot. And I use that word literally. He's not smart enough. He's not honest enough. He's not tough enough. He can't run the city. I lived in Portland, Oregon. It's a beautiful city. It's nicknamed the Rose City. All right? But it's gone increasingly radical left over the years. And the people there seem to be okay with it. You can't even walk in Pioneer Square because it's dominated by heroin addicts and dope pushers. The main square in the town. Visible. They don't care. You think people who own property in Portland, Oregon, all right, you got to get out of there. Same thing in Seattle. Your property is going to be 50% of what you bought it for. Nobody's going to go to those places. It's anarchy. In Seattle, the mother of a 19-year-old who was shot dead in the chop zone is now suing the city. All right? Danita Martin, mother of Horace Anderson, who was shot dead, is suing the city saying it failed to protect her son. She said that Horace went to the chop zone, remember, no police were allowed in there, to find out about Black Lives Matter. And he winds up with a bullet in his head and he's dead. So she's suing. See if you see that on MSNBC or CNN. See if you see that. Okay. Fox News has a legal analyst named Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's been around, I think, from the beginning. I know him well. I'd say I was a friend of his. Napolitano does not like Donald Trump. They used to be pals. They used to be tight. But as what often happens in Trump world, a one-time friend becomes an enemy. Napolitano is now the president's enemy. Here's what he says about the president moving federal authorities into the insurrectionist zones. Go.
What happened in Portland over the weekend, David, was not only unlawful and unconstitutional, it was just plain wrong. Sending armed, untrained police into the streets wearing fatigues without the knowledge or consent of the local police actually caused more violence. All the people that they arrested, David, they didn't file one criminal complaint against anybody because they didn't have a basis to do so.
Okay. Now, I don't know about the federal charges. The judge might be right on that. Okay, I'm not sure because it's very hard to get information out of there. But when he says it's not only unlawful and unconstitutional, it's wrong, he's wrong. Here's what the Constitution says. All right, this is the Insurrection Act, Section 253. Quote, the president can invoke his act, this act, if insurrection, violence, or conspiracy are hindering the execution of federal or state laws or depriving citizens of their constitutional rights. The act can be invoked if state authorities are unable or fail or refuse to protect rights, privileges, and immunities named in the Constitution as secured by law, unquote. There it is. And that's exactly what's happening in Portland, Oregon, and it happened in Seattle. So the president can move federal forces in, and he moved Homeland Security agents and marshals in to protect federal property. And if it gets any worse, he'll move the Guard in to stop it. And he can do it under the Constitution. Now, does Napolitano know that? Yeah, he knows it. And I cannot tell you why he's saying something that's so erroneous. I can't read the man's mind. Okay, so let's sum up. So there are a number of cities in this country that are totally out of control and people are dying because of it, mostly poor people, mostly minorities. The people running the cities and the states, will not stop the murder and the shootings. Will not. President Trump says he's going to do it. All right? Now, it's a good campaign issue for him because Americans don't like anarchy and violence. They don't. So it's a good campaign issue. But I know personally, because I know him, that he's crazed about this because it offends him personally. And you can read about that in the United States of Trump. The reason that some mayors and governors will not control the violence is because they know the more unrest in the country, the worse it is for a political person like Donald Trump. So you got COVID, chaos, you got violent chaos, you got racial animus, uninformed voters, and we went over this yesterday, half of them don't know anything. They go, I don't like to say to the union, I don't like the country, I don't like this. And so I'm going to vote for anybody but Trump. That's what's going on. All right, let's get to COVID. So I told you, and I'm not a brilliant man. I think I'm fairly intelligent and well-educated, and I work hard. So I told you yesterday that the teachers' unions were going to oppose opening the schools because if the schools don't open, Donald Trump will lose the election. He will lose. All right? This is what I said yesterday. Go. Now, the final battlefield is schools. Democratic Party know what I said to you months ago is true. If the schools don't open, Trump loses the election. Because the message, if the schools don't open, is the Trump administration lost the fight. Okay. So what happens? I guess a short time after I said that, Florida's largest teachers union filed a lawsuit to block the return of in-person classes in Dade County. All right? I knew it. This is going to happen everywhere. All the blue states. It won't happen in the red states. The blue states. All right? There you go. Finally, the media. As I said before, this violence and insurrection and crime could not happen if the media opposed it. If the media was pointing out Mayor Lightfoot, Mayor de Blasio, Governor Cuomo, Governor Pritzker, Mayor Wheeler, Governor Brown in Oregon, if they were condemning those people as incompetents, all right, this wouldn't happen. But they're not, because they hate Trump. And one of the biggest Trump haters in the media is Jake Tapper, who is doing just what I said the media is going to do, blaming Trump for COVID. Roll it.
The virus is spreading because the virus is spreading. It's not spreading because of the testing. And that brings us all to today. With nearly 141,000 Americans dead from coronavirus. And the Trump administration's testing czar, Admiral Brett Giroir, admitting just this morning that testing is still not where it needs to be, with long wait times continuing across the country. Yet, there is still no new presidential strategy to get us out of this spiraling crisis. This refusal to lead has a body count.
All right, so you're going to hear that over and over and over and over up to November 3rd. Now, a vaccine is promising, so say the British researchers, and so the stock market is way up. Now, as I said, I'm not going to do this micro-medical stuff because I don't know enough about medicine. But it seems that they're closing in on a vaccine. If they get a vaccine against COVID that turns the election around, people's fears go down, particularly women. Women right now are going to vote against Donald Trump. Trump will carry men, not women. Durham report. So there's been a spate of articles, some cable news presentations that the FBI is in trouble because it knew that the accusation the media was making against Donald Trump that he colluded with Russians was false early on, yet the FBI continued a fake investigation. I think that's true beyond any reasonable doubt. So the next question is, if we know it, and even the left-wing media knows it, why doesn't the Justice Department know it, and where is the Durham report? I don't know. Let's bring in a guy who might. John Solomon, you know him, investigative reporter, author of a brand new book, Fallout, Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and the Washington Lies that enriched the Clinton and Biden dynasties. All right, book is available everywhere. I read the book, John, and I'm super busy.
Thank you, Bill.
I am super busy. But over the weekend, I read it because I respect your reportage over the years, and I wanted to know everything you had. So let's start with the Durham report. Americans are sitting there waiting. Is anything going to happen to the people who lied about the Russian collusion? What say you?
Yep, you won't know until the grand jury acts. But what I see as a reporter, particularly over the last 8 weeks, is significant activity consistent with building a criminal case, indictments, plea bargains. You have witnesses being interviewed, multiple witnesses a week, documents being secured, cooperation deals being discussed. I think there's a major effort underway to build a large criminal case against a handful of people, but a very complicated case. All the people who are interacting with the prosecutors tell me they think the time when Durham will surface his first criminal charges will be on or around Labor Day. And all the activity I'm seeing now is kind of consistent. They're getting the witnesses lined up. They're getting their documents. They're talking about cooperation. So, yeah, I think you will. I think before you see a report, I think you're going to see criminal indictments or informations or plea deals first. I think the report might follow after that.
Okay. It's not a formal report in the sense of a Robert Mueller special counsel. It goes to the Attorney General, Barr, and then Barr can put out what he wants to put out. Now, you said something about a grand jury. Are you sure there's a grand jury sitting at this moment?
I'm not sure. I know that people have discussed being asked to go before a grand jury or be prepared to go before a grand jury. So those conversations are had. As the Attorney General said in a television interview 2 weeks ago, COVID has slowed down a lot of the grand juries, so that may come later in the process. But everything that's going on is if you were building a mob case, if you were building a white-collar corruption case, you're going to be taking the very steps that John Durham's team has taken now. I think there are a small number of people in the FBI and the Justice Department. They may find themselves in jeopardy by Labor Day.
All right. We can only hope, and I don't say this in a partisan way. I want justice.
Right. Yeah.
You know, as an American, I want justice. Now, the thing that I was most interested in your book, Fallout, was the Clinton Foundation, because I've done investigations into that as well.
Right.
So here's what I don't get about the Clinton Foundation, which is still up and running. I guess Chelsea Clinton has the most authority right now. Charity Navigator, which is a website that oversees all charities, and we trust it, gives the Clinton Foundation 4 out of 5 stars, which means that it's running efficiently and honestly, according to Charity Navigator. In your book, you provide information that says Bill and Hillary Clinton used their power to raise billions of dollars, not millions, billions of dollars for the Clinton Foundation over the years. Now, where did that money go? Does it all go to legitimate charities, or do the Clintons benefit from the money they've raised?
That's a great question. Listen, you can see evidence of charitable work, certainly in Africa with the AIDS initiative, but the overhead of the Clinton Foundation is enormous. And interestingly enough, the overhead always seemed to go up around election time. When Hillary or Bill were involved in some sort of electoral activities, the overhead would go up. In years when they were kind of out of the public eye, it would go more to charity. I think there's ample evidence that it has done some charitable work, but anyone who argues it doesn't have a political machine element to it hasn't looked at the facts, both from who they're raising money to who they put on the staff to what they're doing, particularly in election years. It's a political machine that, also has a charitable arm to it. I think that's the more accurate way to look at it.
All right. When Bill and Hillary Clinton do something, so say they want to go to France,
Right.
Can that foundation pay for their private jet transportation to France?
It can, and often has. Maybe France isn't the right example, but it does if they combine a trip that maybe has multiple motives with one of the charitable activities. And that is something that we saw time and again, which is if Bill Clinton had a political or personal reason to go somewhere, they'd throw in or lob in a charitable thing, and then the charity would be able to cover that activity as part of the trip. And so that's, there were some audits done in 07, 08, 09, I think is the time frame, that really raised concerns about the accounting practices and the carefulness of the Clinton Foundation. I wrote about them extensively a couple of years ago. It argues against that 4-star rating when you look at the very strong words the auditors use about self-dealing, self-promotion, misuse of foundation resources, and yet they get a cakewalk. They're still celebrated in America as political royalty, but their foundation deserves much more scrutiny than it's been given.
Okay. And the reason I ask you that question is that's what I found. I found that Bill and Hillary Clinton, whatever they want to do or go, they can charge off to their foundation.
Absolutely.
That means they live basically free. So if they want to have a meeting with somebody who's going to donate to their foundation, all of their expenses to go to that meeting are covered by the foundation. And that's a tremendous amount of money going to them personally. Because I have a foundation named after my parents,
right.
William and Winifred O'Reilly. But I don't take any donations from anybody. All right? I fund the foundation myself, 100% me, no one else.
Right.
But if I want to, I could charter a jet tomorrow, go to Bermuda, stay in a $1,000 a night hotel, have a meeting about my charitable foundation with some consultant who's in Bermuda who knows about charities, and I can use
right.
all of that money in my charitable foundation to pay for my trip.
Yeah, absolutely. That is it. A couple of years ago, there's a former DEA money laundering expert and a former IRS expert, and they got together and they did an analysis of the Clinton Foundation, and they filed a whistleblower complaint to the IRS. It's still in various stages, but they basically said the very thing you said. Listen, we saw criminal organizations do the activities that we saw the Clinton Foundation do, and they filed this whistleblower complaint with the IRS. Unfortunately, the wheels of justice turn very slowly, but that case is still working its way through the tax court system. Professional experts who've looked at it, auditors, these guys, have all raised concerns that this is a political machine, sometimes masquerading as a charity. And the American public has accepted it. The media certainly has given them a free pass.
No, there's no doubt about it. And by the way, I never, ever, ever charge anything against my foundation. I don't have a credit card. I don't have anything. I keep it clean. Wow. I keep it honest because it's to go to mostly kids and vets to help them. Right. And I'm not in business to do it. But, look, I don't believe Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, unless Bill Clinton gets tied up with this guy who killed himself.
Epstein, right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to speculate on that story because the press does that all day long, and I think it's wrong. But if Bill Clinton doesn't get tied up with Epstein somehow, I think Bill and Hillary Clinton go to the grave unpunished for anything they've ever done. Last word.
Yeah, listen, that's what the book's about. If you take a look at what they did on the Russia, they were rebooting a Russia relationship, one of the greatest foreign policy failures in American history, and they're cashing in right alongside this foreign policy failure. They're getting it. John Podesta's clean energy company gets it. Bill Clinton gets a $500,000 check. Millions are going to their political machine, the Clinton dynasty, and they walk away unscathed, even though American security was greatly compromised by the Obama, Biden, Clinton, Russia policy of 2009 to 2014. That is what history will look back upon as a great failure, a foreign policy failure.
And an example is that Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 to give speeches. That just goes into
for a single
bank
speech.
Accounts.
Yeah.
Just goes into the bank account. Hey, John, the author of the book, Fallout, Nuclear Bribes, etc. We wish you the best. Thanks for coming on and helping us out tonight.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate being on.
So joining us now to talk about this, Joel Griffith. He's a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He's in Washington, D.C. Mr. Griffith, thanks very much for helping us out today. I've been in this business a long time. I'm older than I look, but it's a long time. And I see a tremendous change in Hollywood, in the news industry. Do you see the same thing?
Oh, we're definitely seeing this change, and I think the crisis is really accelerating it. And you mentioned the entertainment world. We are seeing, sadly, some possibly long-term consequences. University of Houston did a study, a survey of Austin, and 60% plus of those live music venues say they can't survive the 4 months. A lot of those bars, a lot of these cities that have just thrived with this live entertainment, that's going by the wayside. I mean, Broadway is shut into sometime in 2021. This could really alter the way in which we consume our entertainment if the shutdowns continue. And in some cities, it looks like that is going to be happening once again.
Yeah, our entertainment centers are going to be our homes because we'll be on Adobe computers doing whatever we want to do, and we're not going to go out, pay a couple $100 to Madison Square Garden or even to the movie theater. We'll get the movies on Netflix or whatever. But even more importantly than that is the production of the artistic product. So when the cancel culture, you're not going to get Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson produced anymore. You're not going to get pro-American movies produced. You're going to get all of this far-left revisionist garbage. That's what's going to happen. Am I wrong?
No, you are right. And something that has been underplayed over the last few years is the fact that it's not just Hollywood taking a knee when it comes to our flag and when it comes to patriotism. It is our Hollywood elites almost literally bowing down to the People's Republic of China, the Communist Party there. We saw this play out with the NBA over this past year, where if you dare bring a sign in support of the Hong Kong residents that are trying to fight back against the regime, you're asked to leave the stadium or discard the sign. But now we see billions of dollars from China coming in, funding our films. And of course, China's a huge market. And we've seen time and time again, China not just doing a soft censorship, but actually taking a look at some of these movie scripts before they're even produced. So we see the United States, Hollywood, something that for years actually broadcast positive messages and messages of freedom across the globe. We actually see them now catering to a communist regime. And that's the side of cancel culture that we haven't really seen.
We're going to have two kinds of movies, the superhero stuff, all right? That'll be there for the kids. And then the We Hate America stuff. You know, I've had 4 movies where I was the executive producer on the Killing Books, all right? And they're all very well done, in my opinion. But I got a book coming out September 8th, Killing Crazy Horse. Can I get a movie deal on that? No, I can't. Yeah, even though it's fantastic. It's a fantastic movie property because it tells a real story about how America was settled and the conduct on both the federal government and on the Native American side. The real, true story. You think everybody would want to see this. But because I'm me, it's not going to get done. Because Steven Spielberg's not going to do that. Oprah Winfrey's not going to do that. In fact, Oprah's doing a 1619 propaganda from the New York Times. That's what she's doing. And that is going to permeate all of our entertainment. It's all going to come from the left, far left. You're going to see very few vehicles that counter that. And that's a huge propaganda advantage, is it not?
Yeah, you're pointing this out, and when you have China now that is funding 40 of the top 100 top grossing films across the globe the past few years, we're going to see more and more of that. And it really shows the utter hypocrisy that a corrupt institution such as Hollywood is trying to magnify problems within the United States and paint such a dismal picture of our country, and in the meantime bowing down to a communist regime that is repressing its own people and sending away ethnic minorities, the Muslim minority, to basically to concentration camps. It's appalling.
Okay. Last question, Mr. Griffin. If this is the wave of the future in the entertainment world, that you're only going to hear and see politically correct propaganda from the left, far left, is there any hope down the road, 10, 15 years, for this culture to survive when all you're going to get is all what they got in Germany in the 1930s? They saw one thing and one thing only over there. Only saw one thing in Soviet Union, in China. They were all indoctrinated societies by the mass media. And I think that might happen here. Last word.
There is hope, but that's going to require people to wake up. It requires people in your own local school districts to get involved with the school boards. You pointed out the propaganda that's being taught all the way down to elementary and high schools. We have it within our power to go ahead and actually get on those school boards and look at that curriculum and ensure that at the very least throughout those 8 to 5 school hours that our children are not being indoctrinated by the radical left. That's
wow,
within
it's
our
going to be a brawl. I think you're absolutely right. People have to do that. They have to get involved in their local town, and what a brawl it's going to be. Mr. Griffith, thanks very much for helping us out. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, let's get to the mail. First, I want to say thank you to Jimmy Kopp, Princeton, Texas. Jimmy sent us these pictures because he is helping us out with the Stand Up for Your Country campaign. Show Jimmy's truck. This is great. Where do you see this? Stand up. Way to go, Jimmy. Out there in Princeton, Texas. Now, that's a guy making a stand, right? I mean, some people are even scared to put bumper stickers on their cars. Well, I might get keyed. Yeah, all right. I understand. But look at Jimmy. He made his whole car do his stand up for your country thing. Way to go, Jimmy. We really appreciate it. John Russell, Springfield, Missouri. Bill, you are correct that personal behavior is the cause of the spread of COVID. However, President Trump's point was that the numbers reported are higher in the USA compared to other countries because we provided more testing of the virus. But that doesn't matter. It's so insignificant, John. What matters is that people are afraid here in America. And the virus is vicious. People in Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, other states are suffering. That's the only thing that matters. Not testing, not this, not that. So we got to get this thing under control, and the way to do that is you can't go into clusters, as we've said and said and said and said. Teresa Chris, Jacksonville, Florida. I agree with you, Bill. In order for Donald Trump to win, he has to get the COVID pandemic under control. However, I think he also has to show the voters that he has the racial unrest, property destruction under control. Not as important as COVID, because Americans don't blame Donald Trump for the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation or the anarchists in Portland, Oregon, Antifa. They don't blame him for that. All right? And the Democrats, they could try to blame him, but it's crazy. All right? They can't. So the president's going to run on law and order. That's a smart move. But the COVID thing is everything. Noah Emery, Hamilton, Ohio. The daily presidential tracking poll from Rasmussen shows the president 48% job approval. Pretty strong considering the pandemic and government forced economic shutdown. I can't find methodology for Rasmussen, but if it's even close to the truth, how can this poll be so different than the other? Because a daily tracking poll is just done by phone and internet. It's like bing, 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 bing. Okay. Rasmussen was right in 2016, the only polling agency. So I give Rasmussen credibility, but it fluctuates. It's up, down, in, out. Tony Padgett, Chandler, Arizona. Bill, you said there is economic privilege in the U.S., yet isn't having to pay bail when you are poor, proving your point. A poor person cannot afford bail and thus stays in jail, while a rich person can easily afford it for the same crime and gets out of jail until trial. All right, let me break this to you. Crime and punishment cannot be based on what you have in the bank. There's a bail system. The system is there to make sure that you show up for your trial, your hearings, and to protect other Americans from you if you're violent. Just because you're poor doesn't disqualify the bail. That's insane. Now, the unfairness in the system is there. If you're poor, you're much more likely to go to prison than somebody who can afford good lawyers. That's true. But you can't change the system and allow crimes because of that. Because if you do that, people will get hurt. Sebastian Menguilo, Coral Springs, Florida. Bill, I didn't know about the Sedition Act until you spoke about it. I know it may sound a little harsh, but I would love for the government to have that act today. No, you wouldn't, Sebastian. That gives entirely too much power to the federal government in Washington. If they can boot you out of the country because you criticize them, no, you don't want that. Jessica, concierge member. Thank you, Jessica, very much. My husband and I have been Oregonians for our whole lives, and thank you for your coverage of what's happening in Portland. We are not in Multnomah County, thankfully, and there are so many who oppose what's happening in Portland. We both believe there is a silent majority in our state will continue standing up for our country. You're right. Multnomah County has most of the population, but everything else outside of Salem and Eugene is fairly traditional in Oregon. But Portland is a wreck, an absolute wreck. Don Chase, Mount Pleasant, Utah. I received my 15 stand-up stickers. I've already given them out to family and friends. I just ordered more. You're a patriot, Don. Appreciate it. Len Wallet, Rancho Mission Viejo, California, just received 35 stickers. I've mailed 30 of them to fellow patriots. Hey, you guys, I appreciate it. Go crazy, all right? Stickers everywhere. Don't be odious when writing to us. Crazy Horse comes out September 8th. Pre-order, please. Back in a moment. Quick final thought. Sports opens up. I said in the NFL part of the program, it's going to be a disaster for that league, but this is good. It gives us a diversion. Even though there's no fans, it's good. I'm not going to watch the basketball. Too radical for me. Baseball, maybe. Football, much less. Hockey, go Islanders. Going to watch hockey. And I'm glad sports is coming back. We need the relief. See you tomorrow.